or Medicare. This week he suggested he was open to cuts during an interview with CNBC. What do you think?
Well, first, just mark it down. I guess we're at about 10:20 Eastern time that Bakari Sellers agrees with Scott Jennings. That's first. I think that the campaigns have to be forward-looking. I think that campaigns have to be able to articulate what they're going to do for individuals today, particularly around kitchen table issues. When you come to things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, this president has a unique ability to talk about preserving those institutions, whereby Donald Trump does not have the ability to talk about policy with any depth. And that's what you run into. That's why he gets himself twisted in these pretzels. And this is also why the Republican Party and Donald Trump almost have to talk about culture issues and wage into culture wars, because this president does not have the depth in a one-on-one interview, a one-on-one debate, to talk about these issues of substance. And that is probably the biggest problem that we'll see going forward in the dichotomy between the two.
Yeah, Scott, I did want to ask you about something that's taking place over at the RNC and get your take on what's happening over there. An attorney for Donald Trump will join the RNC as senior counsel for election integrity, Christina Bobb. I'm just wondering what you think of that. I mean, this is a name that came up during the 2020 campaign cycle. She's an election denier. I mean, really, when you're an election denier, you're a reality denier. But is that going to be helpful at all to have election deniers at the RNC? I can't imagine you're happy with this.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know her personally, so I can't speak to her qualifications or credentials for this job. I do have great amount of belief that Chris LaCivita, who is effectively taking over the RNC for Trump, knows what he's doing. So I believe in Chris, and I believe in his ability to manage it. It's not unusual for political parties to hire a bunch of lawyers. The Democrats will as well in preparation for, a close election. This particular person, let's be honest. She said some things and got way out there in the last election.
Yeah.
My general view is if you're going to go to work for a political party or a campaign, the question really is, are you the best person for this job? Do you have the credentials to execute on a plan that helps my campaign win?
Yeah, Scott,
that would be what I'd be asking.
The thing, though, is that when they say, well, we want to have lawyers focused on election fraud, I mean, it was Donald Trump and a slew of alleged co-conspirators who allegedly tried to pull a fraud on the American people, sending in alternate slates of electors, claiming that there was election fraud in all these states where there wasn't election fraud. And then one of the persons who was instrumental in that effort back in 2020 is put over at the RNC. Isn't that a troubling sign?
Well, it's not unusual for parties to hire lawyers. This particular person, I will say this. I've never been involved in a presidential election. I've been involved in a bunch of them in which the national party wasn't able to attract the best and brightest lawyers from all throughout the conservative movement to help on its election integrity efforts. The same will be true of the Democrats. My question would be, does this person fit into that group? Is this the best possible person you could get for this? I've asked this about Trump's legal team before. I think he's had some not so great lawyers representing him in court, and it's led to some losses before. If I were in their shoes, I would just say, are these the best people we can get? Because we're going to need the best people if the election is going to be as close as we think it is.
And Bakari, do you want the president focusing on this? And talking about he's in the Midwest. He's got issues there in the Midwest. We saw what took place in Michigan. He's got to win all of these Midwestern states, like Michigan, like Wisconsin, if he has any hope of being reelected. Where does this election integrity issue fit into where the president and his campaign should be? Or should they just let the RNC and have these self-inflicted wounds over there and just sort of work on the issues they need to work on?
Don't nobody care about who the RNC hires as a lawyer that is probably seventh and in charge over election integrity. In Michigan in particular, you have people who have real issues. They're talking about wages. They're talking about health care. They're talking about access to quality care. They're talking about schools. They're talking about lead pipes. So this, if we had to rank it, would probably come to somewhere around 937,000th on the list of things that Joe Biden can talk about. They're not focused on this at all. Look, this is for the chattering class. This is for us. This is for D.C. Because at the end of the day, real American people aren't necessarily worried about this. And those self-inflicted wounds, just cut by cut by cut, are just indicative of who the Republican Party is. I do think Chris LaCivita can do a great job at the RNC. I think he's a formidable foe. I think Jason Miller is a formidable foe. The problem is it ain't many of them over there. And that's the biggest problem they have. They don't have much talent on their bench because nobody wants the stain of Donald Trump. And so those self-inflicted wounds will take care of themselves. The President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States must stay on task and stay on message.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Scott Jennings, Bakari Sellers. Good to see you. Thanks so much. In the meantime, we are 24 hours away from Election Day in Russia. Why the election still matters, despite the fact that Vladimir Putin is poised to be president.